What's the first thing you say in the morning when you get up? Is it always the same thing? Is it some variety of My wife has a coffee cup that is measured as don't speak, getting close, okay. Now, in traditional Jewish life, there is a prescribed morning blessing. Something you're supposed to say the first thing you say when you wake up every single morning. Here's the blessing. I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati v'chemla rabba emunatecha. I offer thanks before you, living and eternal King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Your faithfulness is great. In other words, I'm alive. I woke up and here I am. I'm still here. Thank you, God, for giving me another day. It's a mantra. It's an affirmation of your faith. It's an expression of feeling lucky to be alive for one more day and thanking the author of that miracle. Now, some years ago, I wrote a similar blessing for one's first morning coffee, if one were so inclined. Modeh ani lefanecha kafe matok v'cham shechazarta binishpati b'chemla rabba kafinecha, which is, I offer thanks before you, coffee, sweet and warm, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Great is your caffeine. Now, my coffee blessing is mostly tongue-in-cheek and a joke. For one thing, I don't drink coffee. Second, coffee can't hear us. So speaking to coffee, maybe in a poetic frame of mind, but also a little bit jokingly. And of course, coffee doesn't reward or punish me if I do or don't thank it. It will be there the next day no matter what, unless I run out. And yet, for those who need it, when they have that first cup of coffee in the morning, they may feel a deep sense of gratitude. They may feel fortunate to be able to have that essential and joyful and restorative experience every single day. Now, if they feel inclined, they could express gratitude to the machine or the person that made this for them. They could feel grateful and fortunate for the discovery of coffee itself, for the workers who grew it and harvested it. They may even thank the multinational corporations who supply chained it to the grocery store or to Starbucks. Sometimes you might simply feel a warm feeling of gratitude. You might just feel lucky to be alive. If you're at a vacation home on the lake and you wake up early in the morning and you see the sunrise and you have that coffee or that tea or that companionship, you just feel lucky to be alive, to be safe and warm, and to be able to start your day. A more religious person might say that they feel blessed. I might say I feel lucky. Here's an example of something that I might recite in the morning in place of either the joke coffee blessing or the traditional gratitude to God. It's one of our high holiday readings by a poet named Bernard Green called Grateful. Grateful I am as I awake each morning, drawing upward, sleep breaking about my head as I fill my lungs with wakefulness. Grateful I am alive. Why this is so puzzles me, being in sound health and years away from the numbers of my death. Am I morbid of living, some Freud's substitute? Is this the wages of secular sin, obsessed? But I am silent and left only with gratitude, gifted now to each moment, and especially each flower. I'm sure you've had examples where you felt fortunate, where you felt lucky. It could be directed at someone or something. It could have been a kind of free-floating pleasantness. But I wonder if you'd be comfortable sharing for a moment when you felt truly lucky in your life. I'll grab our mic if you want to share. And those online, of course, can unmute themselves and share some thoughts that way. David, do you mind passing? Thanks.
This may sound corny, but I mean it in a slightly different way. But I feel very lucky that I met my wife. And we may all feel the same way, but really when you break it down, how lucky is it that we happen to cross paths? That the time when we were set up on a date and I actually left and she had to, how lucky are we that we collided, that we were in the same space at the right time, and that we recognized it. This is not necessarily all our doing, but it has to do with chance. And it takes a lot of rigor and courage to recognize how much our destiny depends on good luck and bad luck.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Well, we also had a moment when we met on July 4th, 1976, at the Bicentennial in Philadelphia, where I was living. Emma was here in Chicago, but an old friend of mine was living and working out here. And she came with him and his wife and some old friends of mine from high school. We all met at City Hall at noon, and then we walked all through the thing. And at the end of the day, what happened? The fireworks were being shot up. We're sitting on the art museum steps, and, thousands of people are sitting there. And then the last one goes off. Everybody gets up, and we're waiting for the crowd to thin out a little bit before we go. And then we're sitting, we don't see our friends anywhere. Okay, so we go for a walk back through Philly, and I'm showing her around. Eventually, I drove her back to where she's staying at my friend's parents' home, where some of the other folks were, and when we got there, they said, "What happened to you? We never left. We were sitting there looking for you." And we said, "What? we didn't go anywhere. We looked for you." Anyway, 3 weeks later, she came back and visited. A couple of months later, I came to Chicago, where we've been ever since.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go from, you're talking about much bigger things in life, I'll go to something a lot smaller. This afternoon, Bruce and I finished work early. We walked over to Fort Sheridan. There's a gorgeous path there, and we spent a couple hours just walking around. And, you look around at the beauty around us and how lucky we are just to have these resources, be able to take an afternoon off, be able to have a beautiful day, and everything just can sometimes line up. And when we have those moments, I try really hard to appreciate them, because it doesn't happen all the time. But that's what life is those really special little things as well as the big things.
We were there today too.
We didn't see you. Did you feel lucky?
I'm going to piggyback on that. I walk to work every day. I love that. It's 10 minutes. We live in Evanston. And I appreciate that 10-minute walk, even when the weather is not good. 5 days a week. 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back. It's just really nice to be able to do that. So I'm grateful for that, and I feel lucky.
I'm going to piggyback on Don's piggyback. I walked to work today upstairs. And I don't do that every day, but I do it a lot of days. And it's actually in the spirit of what Elise and Don are both saying. It's nice to sometimes step back and remember what an unbelievable time we live in. That, you know, I walked upstairs and I logged onto my computer and I had a video call with a client in southern Missouri, and then I had a conversation with somebody in Arizona, and you know, and then I walked back downstairs and made lunch, and I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I had a history professor in high school. When people would ask him, when would you like to live of all the times that you've learned about? He said, right now, even if only for the dentistry. We take advantage, you know, we don't even notice all the advantages that we have living as we do in 2024. And in some ways, I wouldn't want to live any other time.
I feel lucky. My children are spread out across the country, and I feel lucky because they call. And we connect, even though we're far away from each other, and they call their grandparents. And my daughter came in last weekend for her grandfather's birthday and for my sister-in-law's birthday. And we're planning to see my son in September. I just feel so lucky that my family likes being together and wants to be together and has to work hard, but we like to be together.
Yeah. These are wonderful examples of reasons we feel lucky, times that we feel fortunate, and sometimes it takes an effort to feel fortunate. You know, we could face a challenging point in our lives. We can be dealing with a health issue, or a relative has a health issue and there's not much we can do to help, or we feel sometimes it's beyond our control. And then we can remind ourselves that other parts of life are still good. Maybe we have comfortable housing, we have secure food, we're not financially on the precipice, and there's so many other things that could go wrong. In traditional Jewish life, there's a blessing for just about everything. Blessing for all different kinds of food and drink. If you want to hear a very funny spoken word piece, the author Shalom Auslander is sometimes featured on This American Life. And he did a short piece from his memoir. The memoir is called Foreskin's Lament. You get a flavor of his humor from that. But the piece that was on This American Life is his recounting of a blessing bee in his Orthodox school, where the teacher would announce a food, and then you had to say what's the correct blessing or blessings for this food. Now, some things are easy, like a bagel. It's the same as bread. Or a blessing on carrot is a particular generic blessing for vegetables, things that grow on the earth. Or wine, or grape juice, or jelly, those are all part of the same category. But what about an ice cream in a cone? Do you bless the ice cream first, then the cone first, or do you bless the cone first, then the ice? Mushroom barley soup. Okay, so it gets more complicated. But it gives you a flavor of this world where there's a specific blessing that's appropriate for everything. Food and drink. There's a blessing for seeing someone after you haven't seen them for a long time. It's actually, blessed are you, God, who resurrects the dead. So there's a bit of a humor involved there too. There's a blessing on seeing a rainbow. There's a blessing on seeing a king. There's a blessing specific for seeing a multitude of 600,000 people or more. There's even a blessing for successfully leaving the bathroom that praises God for creating humanity with tubes and holes, and if any one of them were blocked or obstructed, we couldn't survive, so thank you, God, for success. Now, all of those statements and those blessings that are blessing a God for having done something is really the people saying that they themselves feel blessed. They feel fortunate to be able to do or to experience what they're experiencing. The feeling is directed at a you, the cosmic you. Now, if we say we feel lucky or fortunate, is that a kind of humanist cop-out for saying someone up there likes you? That's feeling lucky, right? Someone up there likes you. You must have had someone on your side. Maybe feeling lucky is a betrayal of secular humanism and our emphasis on both reason and human self-determination. How can I be in charge of my life when it's just a matter of luck? And yet we have these experiences, we have these feelings of feeling lucky. Now a cynic might also respond and say, who are you to feel lucky, to feel fortunate in your life when there's war and disease and famine and disaster happening all the time? How can you be fortunate for your personal respite from these terrible things, or you're living in a bubble to be able to be unaware of them in an overall painful and difficult human experience? Is feeling lucky just a kind of moral nearsightedness, where I just live in my own world and don't think about the suffering of others? Is it a kind of egotism, thinking, well, I'm so fortunate the world conspired to make this possible for me? Is it a callous indifference to the suffering of others to take joy in our own lives? We face a basic challenge. These feelings are natural. These feelings of feeling lucky, feeling fortunate, feeling blessed, if you like that vocabulary. And feelings are different from theology and philosophy. They're not anti-rational, believing in a cosmic force running the world for your benefit. They're non-rational. They're not analyzing, they're simply experiencing. They come to mind. They're very human. One of the challenges of humanism is that we have to answer the needs that religion answers. Religion provides an explanation. When something wonderful happens to you, here's what you do. So we have to have a way to respond to those feelings, to accept them, and even to cultivate them if we find that they enrich our lives and motivate positive behavior. If feeling fortunate may cultivate humility, it may cultivate compassion for those with worse luck too. You see, if we realize that some of our success was because we were fortunate, then maybe we don't think that everything is pure meritocracy. If we see other people with worse luck, we realize maybe it was circumstances that enabled us to be successful and that they deserve extra compassion because of their circumstances. Maybe feeling lucky inspires us to plan and to prepare, to account for adverse circumstances. We don't rely on our luck always being good, always being fortunate, and we certainly don't rely on a cosmic benevolence to ensure that everything turns out the way we want it to. There's no guarantee of a happy ending. Feeling lucky might even encourage us to be generous, to share our good fortune with others. And it might help us to acknowledge the advantages that we have coming into life where some of us start on second base or further. Sometimes life is a matter of luck. Genetic diseases, accidents, natural disasters, they're all beyond our control. I sometimes describe life like paddling a canoe. You can control your direction and your speed to some extent. But if the wind kicks up, if the current gets stronger, you might capsize, you might get wet, you might not go exactly where you want to go. If you don't paddle, life will push you wherever it will. So it's worth paddling. But we also need to know that sometimes we're not going to control everything. And we have to, in that old phrase, find the way to manage what we can't control, but to control and to address what we can. Sometimes our choice is how we respond to life, and not necessarily what we do. With a diagnosis or with a family dynamic, we may not control it all, but we can try to affect it positively by how we respond to that circumstance. Humanism and humanistic Judaism needs to answer a key question of life. Why do bad things happen to good people? Religion has an answer. It's you sinned, either in this life or in a past life. It's a test of your faith. All those examples of bad luck, they're simply a confirmation of the faith you should already have. That's why in traditional Jewish life, when you hear that someone has died, you say, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed is the true judge, no matter how they died. In our case, though, we ask different questions. When something bad happens, when there's bad luck in the world, when a disaster takes place, we may not ask the question, why did this happen? Why did it happen? Pardon the phrase, shit happens. Things happen. There's not part of a cosmic plan or a script that's being enacted. We can ask how it happened. We can try to understand it, to at least understand the mechanism, to learn to do better the next time, to provide new safeguards going forward. But we don't have to ask or answer a why question, because there is no cosmic plan that's being enacted that we have to explain. And we also don't add guilt to suffering. Because if you assume it's part of a plan, and you assume there is justice in the universe, then if someone dies a horrible death, they deserved it, because the plan is just. In our case, they didn't deserve it. No one deserves suffering in a cosmic sense. It happens. We try to mitigate it, we try to reduce it, we try to avoid it. But in the end, if it happens, we don't say it's your fault too, because the world must be fair, you must have done something wrong. We don't add guilt to suffering. And we can also acknowledge whatever the humanist translation of "there but for the grace of God go I" might be. We know that it's not only by my own efforts that my life is good. There's a concept that comes out of Buddhism called mindfulness. The idea is that you should be aware of what you're experiencing at any moment through any process. And I remember when I was in a course on psychology and religion, they had us go to a Buddhist temple, experience a meditation practice, and one thing they did was they gave us one raisin. And they had us put one raisin in our mouth and not chew it for a minute. And then move it around to the other side and not chew it for a minute. And then to take just a little bite to squeeze a bit of the juice out of the raisin, and then hold that, swallow that, but hold it, not to chew the rest. And then finally, in minute 4, minute 5, to finally chew and swallow. Of course, it had begun to break down in our mouth already. I remember that raisin more than any other raisin I've ever had, because you take the time, you take the focus. That's part of the point of this mindfulness approach. And so feeling fortunate makes us mindful. It makes us aware of what our lives are, what we value, what we find most important. It's a cultivation of a practice that can bring meaning to other parts of what we do and how it affects others. You see, we can live with both joy and pain at the same moment. They don't cancel each other out. They coexist. They each deserve attention. We can feel pain for the suffering of others, and we can also enjoy our own lives and find ways to do both. And even if we are in difficult times, we can feel fortunate, either compared to others, which is not so good, but compared to worse times in our own lives. We don't have to thank a God for a near disaster. I was in a car accident and I only broke both my legs. Thank God. Well, you didn't have to have the accident, if you want to be picky. But we can also say, thank engineers, thank traffic safety, thank emergency medicine, and you were lucky. Others in the same circumstance might have had an even worse result. And so we can find times, even in difficult times, to feel fortunate. If your family has a health issue, perhaps you're safe and secure in your own life, and they may have a positive diagnosis, and then things move forward in a positive way. That's the way life works, and sometimes it goes the other way. But a humanist approach to luck accepts that you don't have to feel guilty if you feel lucky, and you don't have to feel guilty if you're unlucky either. We shouldn't be smug and complacent to think that this is just the natural course of things, that this will always turn out that way for me. We shouldn't be self-satisfied and look down on others either. In Jewish life, there's a concept of the Jews are lucky. Now, it doesn't mean they're good at the casinos. What it means is they're the chosen people. They have a special destiny, special attention from the universe. It's another version of saying they're special, they're lucky, they're different. Good advantages for them. Now, some have tried to tweak that concept of the chosen people into the idea of being chosen for a mission or chosen for special attention from the God. But however you define it, feeling chosen is a way of feeling different from others, for special attention. I sometimes get wedding couples who will say to me if they have an outdoor wedding, "Can you put in a good word so it doesn't rain at the wedding?" I say to them, "Well, you got the wrong rabbi." I don't do that. Also, I say if I really could control the weather, I wouldn't just be piddling around at weddings here. I'd have other things that I could be doing. But in reality, I don't assume that the world organizes itself to my benefit, that it's going to work out well for my wedding and not for something else. And besides, what does everybody say when it rains on a wedding? It's good luck. Now, does that mean it's bad luck if it's sunny at the wedding? No, no one's going to say that. You see, this is how humanity puts meaning inconsistently into human experience. If luck can coexist with taking credit when you deserve it, and you can accept that when circumstances align to your benefit, it may not be from your merit, or it may be from a combination of what you did and what happened to you, then feeling lucky can be an intimate, even a meaningful part of a humanistic approach to life. So I want to conclude with one more poem from our High Holiday Liturgy. It's a poem by Estelle Nachmov-Podauer. It's called "I Do Not Ask." I used to mumble many words in the prayer book without much thought, even all-wise, all-good, all-powerful God, until dear Clara was felled by a stroke, she who always did for others, now helpless, shorn of dignity. The contradiction of those words struck me then, forced me to shake my head over and over again. But saying no and saying nothing are not for me. I need to say yes. Yes to a soap bubble afloat in sunshine, to a newborn baby's perfect fingernails, to a child reading a first sentence, to the look of love that lights a face. I do not ask who or how, I just say yes.